Okay, we got about another minute to go here, and I'll call the meeting to order. Okay, it is now 6:30 according to my computer time here. So I'll call the facilities meeting to order at this time. Let the roll call show that all board members are present along with other guests. First item is the approval of minutes of the July 27th meeting. You were all issued a copy of that. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve of the minutes as presented?
I so move.
Motion's been made. Is there a set? Who made the motion? Kim made the motion?
I did.
Okay. Don, you seconded it? Okay, a motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion stands as presented. Okay. Next item is public comment.
No
I
public
don't
comment.
have anything. What was that, Krista? I'm sorry.
I didn't receive anything.
Okay, no public comment. Okay. The next thing, item E, items placed at the request of the chair. This came in late. It's going to be a discussion on the Punky Manor race that's coming up in a month from now. I was hoping that Mark Thomas would be on. I don't see Mark out there any place. So anyway, I'll just he had contacted me as far as the Punky Manor is coming up here in a month, and he was wondering about lifting the quotas as far as for because it is such a big event, and it's it's their big money maker. And so I wanted to have that on there because I wanted them being the racing association, to explain their situation, where they're at, what they're looking for. I invited KT to be on here because I also want to have her input as far as how the numbers have been going. I mean, I think we all know, but I want to have the official report. And then I would like to have a discussion on what the board feels here. And since there is nobody from racing here, I mean, basically what they want is to have 100%, open it up. I mean, that's the bottom line. Now, from the last race, I did get the numbers of the people as far as for ticket sales, as far as non-vaccinated, vaccinated, underaged and stuff. Mark did provide that to me. So I guess at this time, KT, I guess I'll turn the floor over to you. If racing people come on board, we'll obviously allow them time, but KT, if you would please, the floor is yours.
Sure. So to give you guys a COVID-19 update, in the update I gave the Racing Association on Monday is that we had 77 cases in the previous 7 days. So that's from Monday to Sunday previous. And that put them at a restricted grandstand amount for this Friday of 35%, looking at the resolution that had been put forward before by the facilities committee. And so we talked through that through. It also included the need for masking because we were less than 50% of Grandstand based on, again, the resolution that the facilities committee had passed. So that was Monday. We've had a rough week. Yesterday, we had 36 cases come through, and we also had an additional 7 probable cases. So those are the PCR, are the confirmed cases, and the antigen, if you were to go over to Stout, or if you were now Purvey is also doing rapid tests, those go into our probable cases. So our total case count for PCR positives as of today is 5,024. And then we are at 457 for our antigen positive or probable cases. So definitely a significant increase. When I left the office this afternoon, we were at about 22 cases today. So definitely seeing significant increase in cases. We're also seeing cases, as we've discussed before, differently from Delta variant that is impacting people that are fully vaccinated. And then also concerningly, we're seeing cases that are impacting people that have natural immunity or have, we call it a reinfection in people that are previously have tested positive. So both those things are concerning to me. With our vaccination rates, we are seeing some increase in vaccination. It's modest, and it is very much centered around school-age children. And I think that is parents making the decision to move forward with vaccination as an effort to keep their kids learning best and in person. But we are still about 10% less than the state. So we're at about 40.5% of, I think 40.6 as of today, of our Dunn County residents are fully vaccinated. And then if you look at, sorry guys, I'm having windows installed in my house, so they're just doing some cleanup. I hope that noise isn't too disruptive. So if you look at our activity over time. So we are seeing an increase in trajectory. Obviously with a day like we had yesterday, that's going to increase things. It's Wednesday to Wednesday. Any questions on any of that?
Okay, I see no hands up or nobody speaking. Mark? Mark, can you hear me? Red Cedar Racing, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mark? You're muted. You're muted. So.
Yes,
So
I got you.
basically, okay. So basically, when I opened it up, we are down to the discussion part, and so I want you to say what you want to say about the Punky Manor, so at this time the floor is yours as far as what the racing would like to see on the Punky Manor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We appreciate this opportunity to, discuss with you kind of what our goals and wishes are as it pertains to the Punky Manor, and which is fast approaching. Just a little quick history here, how this all goes down. This Friday night coming up, the 27th, is our last scheduled regular season race. So we will not be racing after Friday night until the Punky Manor Challenge of Champions. The Punky Manor, we have a Thursday night practice scheduled. And then we have Friday night heat races. And then Saturday night is the feature races, all the last chance qualifying races and the feature races. And if there's rain and we have to go to a different day, things would happen on Sunday. And that we may start racing at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. So, and then that's our final event for the season then. So as we sit here right now, we basically have 2 events left. Our season championship race this Friday, and then we have the Punky Manor in the end of September there, the 24th, 25th, 26th. So, and we wanted to have a discussion with this group and kind of let you know what our wishes are and what our goals are, so that hopefully here in the next few days we can get back together and make some type of a decision as it pertains to the Punky Manor. As you can imagine, the Punky Manor, there's a couple things. First off, there is a ton of work that goes into preparing for the Punky Manor. All the way from our food orders and beverage orders and with our distributors, our ticketing and our marketing department, working with sponsorships and those kinds of things. And this is our grand event. This is our event that historically is one of the biggest events in our national association called WSOTA, which most of you know. And this is a crown jewel, so to speak, to the world of racing. And we've had anywhere from a low car count of 140 race cars to well over 200 race cars. So this is financially the opportunity for us to put ourselves in a position to handle our business in the off season with the bills that we have to deal with in the off season, and then get us kickstarted for next season. Yes, and then when you talk about the impact on the city and the county, with the people that come in and partake in activities in town as far as like gas and food and other entertainment opportunities, hotels, those kinds of things. So I know that in 2018, the Chamber of Commerce did an economic impact, and it was 1.2 million is the number that they told us was the economic impact that the Punky had on community and surrounding areas. So so we want to ask that we be allowed to run that event at 100% capacity so that we can go ahead and get our planning done and
we have people trying to book campsites already. I mean, this is a big deal to everybody. This is like Mark said, it's a crown jewel. This is one of the biggest races in the Midwest. It's a very sought after race, and we get a lot of spectators and a lot of race car drivers. And
Mark,
yes,
I only have you
Yes.
speak, please. I only want to have you
okay.
you be the spokesperson here tonight.
Okay, so to add to that, I hope you guys will take into consideration the fact that throughout this whole process with not racing last year, and I know it caused some extra meetings and those kinds of things, but at the same time, I hope that you guys realize that we did our part that we were asked to do and follow the protocols and do the procedures and the policies, and we worked really hard at all those kinds of things to put ourselves in a position to coexist and provide an entertainment opportunity that was within the restrictions that we were given. So I hope you'll take that into consideration as we continue dialogue about how we can make this work and what the possibilities are to make it work, and that we've really worked hard to fulfill our obligation, our side of the obligation, as far as, what we were asked to do within the restrictions and guidelines of being able to race this season and not being able to race last season. So our people have done a really good job, and you look around, and I get that there's that it's still here. I get that, but you go to any local community, and there's grandstands are full. We're outside, and I think people understand the risks and those kinds of things, and we don't need to have a long dialogue about that kind of stuff. I think we all understand that, but there's a lot of events that are going on. We have events coming up in our county, with things going on in Ridgeland coming up, and other festivals in some of the communities around, and other events that are happening. And we would just like to have the chance to be able to be included in being able to have our event in a position where we can make ends meet and be in a financially stable position, and be able to accommodate and bring the Punky Manor back to the status that it has held for 45 years, and so, and I guess the other thing I would like to ask is that, everybody's aware that Stout is soon coming back to school. And I don't know, I guess I'm asking, I don't know, if this needs to be found out or whatever. I don't know how the Stout testing numbers apply to our county. If they, if the kid is from Minneapolis or something, if it goes back to Minnesota and it's a positive case there, if it counts as a positive case in our county. I guess if it counts as a positive case in our county, I would hope that the percentages, how that gets all done, that we would add Stout student population to the population of the county, so that that's reflected in those numbers as far as the percentages go, if in fact we stay with the percentage system. But I guess our first thing is to ask that we be allowed to run this event at 100% capacity. Do you have any questions or on anything?
I guess the question I would have for KT, how would the example that he brought up as far as for a Stout student, if they tested positive, how is that recorded?
Sure. So the percentage is a percent of Grandstand, and it's based on number of cases. And we did kind of disconnect number of cases to as a percentage of population with the last facilities meeting resolution. And so right now we're looking at 77 cases we had in the week. That's just the 77 cases that we had in the week. As far as testing and cases go, since the beginning, if somebody is here while they are sick, we do consider them one of our cases, because that's the risk. The vast majority of Stout students are included in our census data as part of our population already. That change was made, I think, 2 censuses ago. So not this last one that was here, but the one before that. So they are already accounted for in our population of 45,638. I think I've got that right. It might be 368. I can't remember which way that number goes. I apologize. But 368. Thank you for that. But they are already accounted for. That's our testing, our cases, and our vaccinated rates.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for either KT or Mark at this time? Anything specifically you want to ask either one? Don.
Well, this is not really a question, it's just kind of a statement. I'm really disappointed that the Racing Association would come back to us and ask for 100% attendance when KT is dealing with the numbers that they are present right now and what it's going to be. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm just
Did you say everything you wanted to, Don? You cut out there at the end. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for either one of either KT or Mark? I don't see any hands up.
Supervisor Rogers had his hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I guess I just have a comment too. How does this not opening affect the stability of racing if you can't do it for this race?
I assume that question was directed to me, Mike? Okay. Well, like I mentioned, it's a huge event for us. And as far as the stability goes, we're sitting here with, part of our economics is that we have line of credit that we try to use, especially this year when we were, under some restricted numbers, especially early in the year. And then, our equipment upkeep, okay? So right now, our main packing machine, for example, is probably has a lower motor issue, okay? So we have to get that fixed, because that's we have a borrowed piece of equipment. So that's just an example of some of the things that we have to deal with. And then our payroll and, just our everyday bills are obviously part of that is our rental fee. And, we have insurance fees every time we race, they're over $1,000 every night we race to carry the amount of insurance we need. So, those are the numbers that continue to add up. And then we have a couple of events like last week, we did not have very many people in the crowd. Was it 350 or something like that total people in the crowd? So, that's, we broke even barely or just under even, okay? And so this is the event that can drive us being able to pay our bills and yeah, we are not in a profit position right now. So that's where it stands for us.
You have another question, Mike?
Yes, I have a question for KT. What have you seen or have you seen contact tracing that tracks back to the racing event? Has there been have there been cases that are tracked back to the racing?
I'm not aware of cases that have tracked back to where they believe they got it at the races.
Okay, yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of questions. You mentioned last race you had 300 and some people. Is that because of percentages you could only have so many in the stands, or was that all that showed up? Yeah, that's for Mark.
That's what showed up. That was not below restricted number. It was, yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Now we can hear
you. Okay, that was the number of people that showed up. It was not due to the restricted number. And we liken or trace it back to that area high school football started, there was obviously a home game in Menominee. I think we all are aware what Menominee's attendance looks like at football games. So that was part of it. Some of it had to do with the heat. Some racers didn't race due to it was pretty hot and muggy and stuff. So that's
Have
the
you?
best answer I can give you, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Have you, in the last few races, were you, when you could be 100%, were you 100% or were you under that?
As far as full capacity goes, the
Yes.
1,400,
Yeah,
no, we have not been at 1,400 people.
so,
And how the-
and you could have been at 1,400 if they would have come, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that tells me that some people are probably not coming to the races because they've made their own decision not to.
Correct.
Yeah. I guess I've got a question for KT also. With the contact tracing, have you had any contact tracing that an outbreak like we had at the county board, that has anything come from a outdoor event, or has the majority of it come from indoor events?
There continues to be something protective about being out of doors. And so I just want to acknowledge that. I'm not aware that a couple outbreaks come online, but I do believe that nothing sticks out to me as far as an outside event connected to an outbreak, to answer
Okay,
directly.
Thank you. And then I guess for Chuck, you mentioned you had some statistics or numbers of how many vaccinated and showed up. If you could share that with us before, I assume that you're going to have another meeting, maybe to make a decision on this. And
Yeah.
if you could share those numbers with us, that'd be great before we have that meeting. That might be helpful. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, and the numbers that I did have was ones that Mark had sent me, as far as from that would be from 2 weeks ago. Correct, Mark?
Yeah. But it was how many people came that were vaccinated and how many people that came to the total, and I guess those numbers might be helpful.
Okay, I'll
Yes.
see that everybody gets them. And
Yes.
then Mark, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to answer your question. Yes, they were from 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So
The
Okay.
August 13th race.
August 13th, okay.
I guess I'd be curious how many people have come that have shown to you that they're vaccinated already. If you have those numbers, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Mark, as long as you're on the line here, I do have a question on the senior student number, which was 124.
Yep.
Were the seniors asked if they were vaccinated when they were sold their tickets, or how did you classify a student? Obviously is a student, but how did you classify a senior?
Okay, so we did ask as many of those people as we could. I did have a conversation with KT, and since we couldn't separate that number, those all went into the unvaccinated or non-vaccinated people for that event. And so that's the numbers that were on the chart or the information that I sent you. That's why they were included in that number.
Oh, okay, so,
Because that tick, and we can get creative on our end if we need to, as far as, you know, being able to separate a student vaccination and a senior vaccination. Because what we have is we have a non-vaccinated ticket, whatever that number is that we get from KT and as per our resolution. Okay, and then we have the vaccinated. So, and we have signage up, and we had not been asking 100% of the people because we weren't sure how that all went with HIPAA and stuff, and that got clarified for us better now. So, you know, the other night, like I said, we weren't even close to any kind of number that we were allowed to have in the grandstand to begin with, whether they were all non-vaccinated or vaccinated. So, you know, that was not an issue last week with the number of people that we had there. So, but we can look at another ticket option with because our general admission grandstand ticket is $15, and then our student, anybody that's 13 and older, including college students that can show us their college ID, they get in for $10, as well as senior citizens get in for $10. And then our 12 and unders are free admission. They have been since I've been a part of the board, so.
okay, thank
And
you.
that's where the free number came. That's where I had free, and the number of ticket, I think it was what, 91 or 71, I think. if I
71.
remember right.
Yeah, 71.
Yeah, so.
Yep.
Yeah. But like I said, we're more than willing to, you know, sit down and work together to create the proper dynamic that's needed for that situation beyond what we're already doing, you know. So with our signage up, asking for people to volunteer their vaccination status and that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, Dave.
The recommendation from, what is it, CNC or whatever, for outdoor events, has that changed at all? Or, because I think all the schools are not, you know, they're not masking or anything for outdoor events. What's the recommendation for outdoor events at this time?
So you mean for CDC?
Yes.
Sure. So the CDC is for unvaccinated people. They are encouraging people to mask in large gatherings. They don't really define that with a number, which is the challenge. In schools, they are allowing for kids to do recess and other outdoors activities without being masked, regardless of vaccination status.
Okay. I've noticed that Eau Claire has gone to masks indoors, but not outdoors or at football games, if I'm correct.
I'm not entirely sure what Eau Claire is doing.
Okay.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for either KT or Mark at this time? Okay. Okay, then that, I'm gonna end this conversation here then. And we will be having a meeting coming up to discuss it in more details. I just wanted to give both parties time to speak and ask any general questions we have here. And obviously they will be invited to the next meetings if we have more specific questions. So thanks, Mark. Thanks, KT, for coming to the meeting and answering our questions. and we'll be in touch. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item F, staff and recreation reports, fair and fair board. Deb, what do you got for us?
Not a lot of additional information. We're still crunching numbers. What we've been focusing on right now is to making sure that we have all of the awards and placings in place, because we have to finish up those state required reports by tomorrow. So we still haven't finished putting all of our other numbers together. As you know, Sam, or you probably don't know, but Sam, our coordinator, has gone back to school. So she's got a lot of homework and things there. So she's not been able to help me with it quite as much. And she has always done that piece of it. So between the two of us, we're going back to some of the superintendents, because we know we have some placings that are missing, and we want to give all those kids credit for everything that they worked so hard and did. So that's probably my biggest update, other than what I wrote in there. And our annual report is due in September, so I will have more information then, and a better report next month, because we will have everything wrapped up with the state. So.
Okay. One question, have you heard any reports of any other fairs throughout the state that had a COVID issue per se?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Wisconsin State Fair just wrapped up. Of course, that's the biggest fair in the whole state. I do know that their attendance was down, which they expected it to be down a little bit coming back from not having a fair last year. They were very pleased and had planned for a lower. They didn't pass their million people or million count this year, so they were a little bit disappointed in that, but had anticipated it would be down close to 1 million, but they didn't quite even make their million for attendance. So it's kind of interesting being so close to the Twin Cities area, what Minnesota State Fair is dealing with too. I know I just heard on the news today or the news this week that there's like 150 vendors that have pulled out from their fair, just worried about COVID and everything that's going on. So as far as our fair, it was a perfect time in July to have it before this uptick in the Delta variant and everything else that's going on with the virus. So, and I don't know that I mentioned it last time, but we did have a vaccination clinic at the fair put on. It was no cost to the county, no cost. It was all provided by the state. They had it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and from like 11 to like 7, I think they wrapped it up. They had 12 people that were vaccinated. I was a little disappointed in that. I was hoping there would be more, but they told me not to be disappointed, that that was very good numbers compared to what they've been seeing at other community events where they've popped in with these pop-up clinics, vaccination clinics. So she said, you have to look at it as positive. There was 12 more people that came to the fair that are now partially or fully protected. So I guess that's the way we have to look at it. So they turned a positive or a negative in my mind to turning it around to a positive in my mind. So we were just glad to provide them the space.
Good. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Deb? Okay, I don't see no hands. If not, okay, facilities and parks, operations. Or Scott, you want to talk about that?
Yep. Good evening, everyone. You guys got my written report. Not a lot as far as goings on as far as staff. They've been busy with work orders that have come up, busy with the grounds, keeping that busy and keeping them looking nice. As I put in my report, we had some trees down from storm damage, some limbs. One did take out part of the pavilion at Monoman Park, just an end of it. The structure is still all sound. Some boards will have to be put back up. The boards were knocked down. They were not broken. So I think with a couple pieces of lumber and putting these other ones back up, we should be able to get it back up into place. Some of the tin on the roof has been damaged with this and probably a couple other storms. So I may look at doing some re-tinning on the roof to get it looking good and structurally sound and everything. The other branches were in Pineview Park and Caddy Woodlawn. No damage, just trees came down, or the limbs came down. So everybody's been keeping busy, doing a good job, and things have been staying on track. And as far as projects, the big project thing is that the judicial roof project has been finished up. That was finished up last Friday. Everything is looking good on that. And other than the other projects, I guess John tells us we're moving on to the front parking lot project here in a couple of weeks, so that'll be a good feeling. Everything else is staying on track. That's about it for me.
Okay, I have a question as far as in your report, you were talking about the installation of air filtration systems. Is this going to be like HEPA filters and UV lights, or just what are they putting in there to kill the viruses, molds, and bacteria?
What it is, it's called a needle point injection system. What that does is it attaches ions to your any of your particles that are in the air, and it attaches to them so that they become larger, so that they can be trapped, so they don't go out floating through the air. And also the ionization system does kill mold and bacteria in the air. These units will be put in each one of the air handlers in the judicial center. So it'll be the whole judicial center, the jail area, sheriff's department, 911, Menominee Police Department. And that's all through a grant through CJC that they applied for. So it'll all be paid for.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Dave.
I had a question about that also, Chuck. But my question was, is this something that is important enough that we should be considering it for any of our other buildings? Or will it work good enough that, I mean, does it work also that we should consider it?
I guess from what I've seen of it is that it does work good. St. Croix County is the one that did this prior to us, and I believe it was Judge Peterson had known about it from St. Croix County, and so then they met about this and encouraged me to check that out. So I checked out the information from my counterpart in St. Croix County, contacted the company and got all the information. This was back last January, and they got back to me. Sarah Benedict from CJC got back to me here in July, saying that the grant was approved and it was a go-ahead. So the stuff is ordered for the Judicial Center. As far as the other buildings, it might be something to look into for putting into the other buildings.
Is it really expensive? Maybe you could, maybe not tonight, but maybe you could bring some information on just what you probably know what it's going to cost for judicial. So maybe you could give us a rough idea in the future of what it might cost to do like the government center or the neighbors or whatever. Because it might be it's just a thought.
Sure. I could do that. The government center is going to be a little bit different system because the units are different that are in there. It's not an air handler that handles a complete section of the building. Whereas in the government center, you have one HVAC unit that handles 3 offices. Some spots it's 4 offices. And then there's other areas where there's 1 unit that handles 1 office only. They do have units to handle this. It's just, it's going to end up being more units to be placed in the HVAC systems.
So all the air system coming into the government center is handled by the AC units all separately. I was thinking the air coming in was all handled by a bigger unit, but
so what you in the government center, so for instance, like your office, Dave, where yours is at down your hallway there isn't a thermostat in your office. There's a thermostat in, I believe it would be Heather Murray's office right next door to you. And so that thermostat handles your office, Heather's, and then the one that's on the other side of Heather. So in a block, there's 3 offices there together. There's a unit that's up above the ceiling, and that is what handles your office.
so that's where we get all the fresh air from, is just for those few offices.
That is where you get your heat and your air conditioning. So there are other vents that go back, that suck air back and take it back to the heat recovery system that pumps your stale air out, and then fresh air comes in and is heated up to temperature coming back into the building. So they're actually 2 separate systems.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I was just wondering, is this something that could be funded by the COVID funds we're getting or holding?
That possibly could be. That's something that can be looked into.
Okay, Scott, but getting back and piggybacking off from Dave's question there, as far as any makeup air that has to come in to the building, because due to exhaust and to maintain your static pressures, there has to be a main handler, or 2 or 3 that actually make up that filter in all the makeup air for the building.
Yes, we do have ERVs that bring in outside air and exhaust air.
Mm-hmm.
Those come into the building, and then your actual heat and your air conditioning are in separate units that are hooked into the geothermal system.
Right, you got your zones, you got it zoned out. Yeah.
Yep, your geothermal system is a little bit.
In my mind, that's where you would want to, if we look into this, that's where you would want to place these devices, because then all fresh air makeup would be.
Right, they would put them in those also.
Yeah.
So it would be put into both.
Okay. Well, I think it's I agree with Dave. I think it's something we need to look into.
Yeah, I can definitely, it's not a problem to come up with some numbers for that.
Yep. And also to Don's questions, as far as funding, that might be a source of. Okay.
I'll check into that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Any other questions for Scott?
Not for Scott, but we might as well. I know Keith is on, so maybe he could look into if there is any COVID money or anything like that, some special funding that might cover something like that, other than our ARPA funds. Or maybe our ARPA funds that we can't use for loss of revenue.
Mr. Chair, I can personally answer. I'm not aware of any dedicated funds specific to this. I know some of the routes to recovery funds last year we could use for this, but there continue to be new funds coming out. As Scott reported, CJCC was able to secure things for the judicial center. So yeah, we can keep an eye out. Certainly, there may be some availability for the ARPA funds. Since these are kind of capital projects in nature for HVAC systems, you could make the argument that this would tie into that. Maybe a suggestion would be to pull the information together. If it's significant enough, maybe look at it as part of your capital planning next spring. But if you want to do it sooner, we could look at that as well, using the ARPA dollars or possibly other funds. So yeah, we'll take a look at that, but ARPA is a potential possibility.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go on. What projects were covered? Facilities fleet. John, what do you got for us?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The update on the Malibus yet, they are still in the process of being shipped. As with most automotive vehicles right now, there's kind of a bottleneck on production and shipment. So we are still waiting on the 5 Malibus for replacement. And then Scott and I sat down with Jen here at the beginning of the month on replacement of our 2018 plow trucks. And we're going to have that coming up here later as an action item on replacing the existing 2018 plow trucks per her recommendations.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for John on that? Seeing none, we'll move into the facilities monthly financial reports.
I'm going to turn that over to John McLaughlin.
All right. I don't see anything change much at all in parks other than the, you got the racing revenue came in. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm not sure. I don't. But yeah, that was the only difference. It went from where you were under like 6% last month. Now you're less than 3%. And as far as with the expenditures, that stayed around 11% for parks. And as far as facilities, virtually not much change at all percentage wise. So I think we're just kind of hanging in there and just like I said, there's not much surprising going on. So unless you guys have specific questions on anything that you see in the details that you want me to speak to or look into.
Okay, does anybody have any questions specifically? I know I don't. Okay. Thanks, John. Okay, so then next one is energy.
Energy, we are still working with Eagle Point Solar on the optimization of a dual system over at the neighbors. I'm still working with Dave Plume, and I'm hoping to get scheduled a meeting with an electrician to see the feasibility of splitting out those meters. So that is still in the works. No new updates on that.
Okay. And then, well, we have miscellaneous here, but nothing on miscellaneous.
No.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Next one, Corporation Council Staff Report. We have none. Next one, the Environmental Services Department, the wheelchair. What's the latest on the wheelchair, John?
The latest on the update on that is Bob Colson is back as a consultant part-time in ENS. Him and I sat down last Friday and had a meeting. Bob kind of filled me in on the to-do list of what it's going to take for the county to do the paperwork and the reports with Accessibility Wisconsin. He is putting together a meeting with the individuals, the contacts from Rotary Club, himself, myself, and Accessibility Wisconsin. So everybody can kind of get on the same page, exchange names, and then kind of go down and make a to-do list on what needs to be done. They did have a chair available. that did go to a different party because they are still waiting on the enclosed trailer for our wheelchair, but they are confident as soon as they have a enclosed trailer lined up to transport, that they will have the next chair ready to roll. And both of them will be to Menominee, and then they're going to provide training for all parties involved. So we are still forging ahead on that. It's just more of the COVID backlog on receiving parts and equipment.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions for John on that one? Okay, seeing none, we'll go down to item G. Considerations for actions to be taken by the committee. Item A, 2022 Public Works Facilities Operation and Parks Budget Review and Recommendations. So they were, John broke them out of the main packet and sent them out to everybody.
And Chuck, I'll share my screen and then we can kind of go down the list.
Oh,
if there's
great.
any anomalies anybody has, we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Chuck,
Yeah.
if I could, I've said this to every committee so far. This is the supervisor's chance to weigh in on the budget. And we're over budget, of course. The ask at the July 28th meeting was over $2 million over our levy, that ask. And so if there's anything that the committees see going through this that they don't think absolutely needs to be there or something, that's their chance to weigh in on it. Because if every committee recommends the budget as it was presented in July 28th, then Keith and Mr. Miller and their team will come up with an example of a balanced budget for us. But it may be, they're probably going to eliminate something that was asked for on July 28th. And I know some supervisors would like to weigh in on this, and this is the chance to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
Krista, I might need your help on this.
Okay, I'll remote into your computer. Hold on. Do you have a second screen, John, or is it just that one?
I just have that one.
I can't get your Zoom screen to come up. Can you get it up so I can see it?
Okay. How was that? Can everybody see that?
Oh, you got it working now.
Okay. So as you can see, our proposed 2022 budget is just over 2.6 million, about a 1.5% increase over last year. Scroll down here. It looks a little bit weird. Typically in the past, we've split out the general property tax, the levy, and that was kind of all just blown into one line. John McLaughlin and Scott have been working together to kind of get smaller buckets, break that levy down to kind of show us a better representation of where the money is going. So that is why when you get down about mid-page here, you got the 1.4 that's typically been the levy. That's been cut to about 860. And the balance of that is basically put into those smaller buckets. And then Scott and John have come up with labels to those lines of where that money is actually going. We get a more true picture of where our money is going and can be accounted for on a little bit better issue. So as we can see, our central transportation, 32,500. Government center, 165,727. I'm not going to read every single line, but typically that the bucket there, all the small buckets in the 860 add up to approximately where we were with that 1.5% increase over last year. So any questions on the revenue side?
Yeah, I have a
Yes,
question. Now, what is that 860,000 is?
That's part of the levy. And what they did is typically we've just put in the 1.45 that we normally get, or right around that $1.5 million for levy. That's just exclusively all been in one line. What John and Scott have done is created a few more lines up here and then taken pieces of that 1.4 million little pieces and put it into actual reflected costs from years past. So now essentially we still have that same $1.5 million we're working from, but now with these smaller buckets, we can kind of see what central transport is costing, what the government center is costing, the facilities and park shop. We get a more true picture when we look at what's it costing for central transport, then we know, and we don't just have to say it's coming out of that 1.4, that general property tax levy line. So Keith has spelled out here what our capital improvement, our long-term, that's kind of the breakdown of that 1,010,000. Some of those might get pushed back depending on where the budget ends up. So we got about $1 million in capital expenditures for improvement projects. So that brings us back to that 2.6, which is about 1.5% over last year's budget.
Okay, John, I'm gonna, I guess I'm asking the group here now, under our long-term debt here, if there's any changes that they want to make on those numbers that are posted there, being the 300,000 for the building management system, the 250,000 for generators, 85,000 for the bike path, 25,000 for the old laundry roof replacement, the abatement, old boiler room abatement, and computer controlled lock system. I guess I need a refresher on what the computer controlled lock system is for 150,000.
That would be basically what it says, a computer controlled lock system, but that would be with a software-based lock system for the doors in the government center, so that it could be keypad based, so that you would be given a 4-digit PIN or 5-digit, however it is, however you have it set up. That would be programmed into the doors that you should have access to. It could be with a fob, or it could be a card that you would swipe. One of those three options. That way, if an employee is terminated and they're leaving on bad terms, whatever, you can go into a computer. I can sit down at a computer at my desk, go into the software, delete them out. They no longer have any access. Either their PIN doesn't work, or their fob doesn't work, or their card doesn't swipe. They can't get into the building. They're locked out.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. What is it that we're locking? And so it's the doors in the government center, all the doors.
Yep, that is for the government center, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, and would that eliminate all the keys then?
It would eliminate keys.
And so so everybody working in the government center would have a separate PIN number.
It would either be a PIN or a fob or a card to swipe, depending on the way you want it set up.
And so do we have a problem? I haven't heard of a problem. Do we have a problem with anything right now at this time?
Right now, we do not have a problem. This is one of the things that was brought up a couple of years ago. I think when we were doing the renovation on second floor. It was one of the things that was a kind of an ask or brought up, mainly I believe by Paul Miller, about updating the lock system to something like this. Currently, if there's a department that needs a PIN changed on keypads, or if there's a employee that is terminated out of a department and a PIN needs to be changed for a certain department, I have to manually go to each door that their PIN is programmed into there and delete it out and program in a new one.
And
It's not a big deal for me. That's not a problem. That's not what I'm getting at. But this system would get locks on more doors than just the handful of doors that we have keypads on right now.
And I guess I'm asking because I don't know these questions.
Sure.
Some people have keys. Is that pretty much just department heads, or do all employees have keys?
I wouldn't say all employees have keys, but the majority do have keys. They're issued a key for the front doors to get them into the building. And then there are those they're issued a key for their suite for the department that they work in. If there's some departments have felt that the employee comes to work and their suite is unlocked, they don't need keys, so they're not given a key. They're only coming to work during working hours when the building would be unlocked, so they have no need for a key.
So the majority of people don't have keys, probably.
I don't know what the exact breakdown is. I know, for example, in finance and admin, there are probably some people that do not have keys issued to them, simply because they come to work and they can get in the building because it's already open. They're issued the code for the keypad in admin to get in the door, and that's all they need. They don't need one for the outside entrance doors or the suite.
Yeah.
So I don't know for factual how many people don't have keys issued to them.
Well, I guess my feeling is I don't like to borrow money either. So, if there's something that we may not need, I would probably lean towards that we don't need this myself. But that's up to the rest of the committee.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
me?
go ahead, Don.
Oh, okay. This is for Scott, I think. What will that HVAC building management system do? Now, the reason I ask that is in your budget, you're asking for $190,000 for energy for the Judicial Center and $93,000 for the Government Center. Now that's $100,000 less almost. Will this increase our efficiency in the Judicial Center, or would we be better not doing that and thinking bigger yet and going to geothermal or something later on?
Okay, so yeah, I just had a meeting with Johnson Controls related to this, and much of the judicial center, the jail portion of the judicial center is still on old pneumatic controls. Those controls are not as efficient as the electronic controls. This HVAC building management system would bring better efficiency with the equipment that we have. Right now, our system in the judicial center is an old train system called Tracer Summit. The one person that knows the system, has used it since it's been installed, would be Jay Mylan, my facility technician at Judicial Center. Unfortunately, Jay has indicated that next spring he will be retiring. So that leaves that system for someone else to learn and keep up with. There has been problems with that Tracer Summit system with getting equipment to, if there's a problem with one of the controls, there has been issues with that. There has been issues with getting someone to work on that to keep the thing up and running. Our IT department has had struggles with that because it is so old and outdated. With the HVAC building management system that we would like to go to would be the same as what is at the government center and the neighbors. That is a Metasys system from Johnson Controls. That way, all of the buildings would be on the same system. You bring up the program on your laptop or your desktop, and you can monitor everything that is going on. You can make the changes from right there. It gives you all of your readings, your trends, all that stuff, so that you can have your system dialed in so that it is running much more efficient than it currently is. So I would say that we would be saving money-wise with new controls.
Okay, just to follow up on that, if we, in a year or so, just find the money and could put in a geothermal, could we use this system with the new geothermal?
The building management system would be able to. It's the same system that is currently used with geothermal in the government center and with the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Mays.
Yes. Go ahead.
Rogers. I guess I have a concern about spending $150,000 on locks, and actually, is there a reason we can't wait on the bike path a little while too? That's a couple of pretty large numbers there that I'm not sure that we have to put out right now.
And I was going to bring up the bike path also, because I believe next year we've got, or the year after, we've got it in there to build a road over from the government center over to Judicial. And it just seems to me that if we build that all at the same time, we've got to be saving some money between the two of them.
Yes. Very true.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as long as we're going over all these, I'm looking at the $250,000 generator replacement. What's the current status of our current generator? Because obviously you're replacing it. How old is it? Are we having problems with it? What are the reasons why we want to upgrade the generator?
The current generator at the Judicial Center is a 1998 model. It's original to the building. We have had some issues with that generator. We have gotten things squared away where we haven't had as many problems, but we have been having some issues with it now and again.
And that generator also does not take care of the whole building. Would the new one take care of the whole building?
We should be able to put in a generator to take care of the whole building.
Okay, thank you.
So do we actually have 2 generators then? If this one doesn't take care of the whole building, what happens to the other part of the building?
The other part of the building is not on generator power. It's so,
Oh, you just, okay.
yeah,
Go without.
yep, just your emergency items, whatever are on the, hooked up onto the generator emergency service.
Okay.
What,
Okay.
for my own information, could you tell me what the laundry building is, the old laundry building, what it's used for?
Sure. So that is the old outside laundry building is, you know where the old boiler room is behind Government Center?
Yes,
There's the building with the stack, the smokestack. So if you look at that building, it's actually two roofs there, 2 pitches. The one to the right side toward the stack, that's the old boiler room. The one on the left side to the west, that is the old outside laundry building. That building we currently use for cold storage for the neighbors and facilities. And that roof was replaced, I want to say it was 2000 or 2001. That was when I first started with the county way back when, working for the healthcare center. Those roofs were replaced back then. So the shingles are really bad. They're getting to that point where something needs to be done. We use that building for cold storage of items that we need to store. If we have a leak in the roof, if it starts, coming in, we're going to lose storage space.
okay, I guess I apologize, I'm at home and I don't have my 5-year capital plan, but it seems like a couple of years down the road, we had in that 5-year plan money budgeted to eliminate the old boiler room building, and I thought that whole building. Is that not the case, and we're only gonna eliminate part of it?
We would look at demoing the boiler room side of it and retaining the laundry side of it. The side that we use for our cold storage. John and I took a look at it, and I think we would be able to demo the old boiler room side off of it and retain the other building for a storage.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yes.
As far as the abatement of the old boiler room, so is there a financial advantage to doing it now as to doing it at the time you do demolition? Would it not be cheaper to have them abate it when they're demoing the building at the same point?
Well, the thing about doing the abatement, getting all the asbestos out of there, then we would be able to go in there and recycle any scrap steel out of there, to recycle that and recoup some money off of that. And then it would be ready for demo. That's the reasoning for putting in money for an abatement, just to get it prepped. We would have to do a pre-demo inspection on it. That would tell us what is there for asbestos. And then we would have a solid price on what the abatement would cost. Right at this point, I do not have that exact cost. I think the 200,000 is on the high side of the abatement. It all depends on what is in there for abatement, or what is in there for asbestos to be abated out.
I guess my follow-up on that would be if you're doing the abatement that way to save, or so that you can scrap out the steel, or you saving enough, or you're paying extra to abate the whole thing, and are you really gonna make it up on recycling the steel in the building?
Supervisor Rogers, can I add to that?
Yes, sir.
Scott and I have had this discussion too with the condition of the roof of that boiler room. We're worried that if we're gonna have to postpone it and the demolition is gonna have to be delayed on taking the building down. Scott and I have concerns that if we don't probably do the abatement in the next 2 years, that if the roof with the rotted condition that it's in, if it falls in, it's going to make the abatement much more difficult and much more costly. So how we were looking at it is, while the building is still standing, abatement is probably as easy as it's going to currently get. We would at least tackle the abatement, and at the same time, then we could recycle any of the steel or recyclables out of there. But then if it had to sit for 2 or 3 years, and if we got another winter like we did in the spring of 19 and the roof did collapse, at least the abatement and the DNR side of it is done. And then we could just go in there and remove the building. So right now we don't want the building to come down and have it not abated, because I think it would be 3 or 4 times the cost to try and sift through a building that's kind of crashed down on itself. So that was kind of our thought process. It's probably not all, obviously, if we could do it all at one time, it would be the cheapest. But because we're kind of have to pick and choose on the amount of money we spend, we think that we would get the most bang for our buck by just doing the abatement now. And then if the rest had to sit, if it collapsed, we wouldn't have as much of a headache to deal with.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions, or what is the consensus here? I think the bike path, in my opinion, should go for sure. And I agree with the computer lock system. I don't think we need that right now. But what's everybody else's thoughts?
I agree with that.
I agree also.
Yeah, I agree too. I hate to see the bike path go, but if we're gonna put a road in a year or so, we can wait that long. And I agree with the lock system.
Okay. So,
I agree with it too.
okay. Well, so then I guess I need a motion as far as,
Maybe we can just have one motion at the end for the budget with the amendments.
okay, that's a good idea. Good idea. So just to recap, we're gonna tentatively, the locks are gone and the bike path. Okay. Okay, John, if you want to continue on with your sheet.
Okay, we're gonna go down to the expenditure side here. And everything pretty much mirrored last year, with the exception of the GASB for the machinery and equipment. That, and Keith and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is depreciation, which we no longer account for in the current SAP software system.
You are correct.
And why is that? We have to replace it.
Yeah, but it's the type of fund that the facilities is. It's a governmental fund. You only use depreciation for enterprise funds, like for highway and for the neighbors. It's an accounting.
Okay.
But for a governmental fund, you do not, depreciation is not good. It's the outlay part of it is what you budget for,
Right.
not the depreciation.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just very quickly, it's a technical correction that we made working with our new consulting firm. When SAP was implemented, the parks and facilities were placed into the highway fund in SAP. So it was being treated identical to highway, which was not technically where we want it to be and where it should have been and where it had been historically. So we've made that correction now, and it's reflecting for its first time in this budget.
So that brings up another question that you just mentioned then. Last year, we had 120,000 in there. Did that go into the highway fund?
That was built to the, yeah, that would have went into the net result. Well, let me pull that back. The audit results actually adjusted those out.
Okay,
In the actual year-end close, those were adjusted out. In 2020 was the first year that we adjusted it through the audit, and then this is the first budget.
so before that, it was going into the highway fund.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Onward.
Yes.
Next line is, yes.
Chairman May?
Yes, Mike.
Yes, go
I
ahead.
have a question on your labor expenses. Do you sub out or contract out like janitorial services and other stuff at the buildings?
Yes.
And is that, can you tell me whether it's cost effective to be paying out a company? It seems to me that we're paying more for a company to come in and do that work than what it costs us to hire somebody ourselves. Could you clarify that for me so it makes sense to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
go
can
ahead.
handle it, John.
Okay.
So yeah, our custodial staff is contracted through Express and Manpower. I have one custodian that is through Manpower, the rest are through Express. So they're temporary agency. The last time that the county board looked at that was what, 2019? And so for the 2020 budget, it was contracted. Where I looked at it, it came back a little bit cheaper to go with the contracted staff with Express and Manpower because we aren't paying out the benefits. Now, I just had this year, I had a custodian through Express that was a very good custodian. And he was going to leave us and take a different job because he wanted to get benefits. So he had an opportunity and he talked to me about it, and I checked into what the difference would be of what he was getting, what we were paying Express compared to what would be his, if he was hired as a county custodian with benefits. I checked that out. I had HR cost it out, and it still came out cheaper for us to have him through Express than it would be to hire him as a county custodian with benefits. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for that, because I always struggle with the concept of paying out when it seems logical it would be cheaper to hire them yourself. So I appreciate that feedback.
You're welcome.
Okay, onward.
Yeah, unless anybody else has any questions.
So in the process of the last year or so of John McLaughlin and Scott streamlining the budgets, we broke down the government center with now the small buckets with items so we can kind of dial in on exact cost or more realistic cost. So that's why we got some zeros in some of here, because we created these buckets here in the last year for the 2022 budget. So for the most part, they're realistic numbers based on past years' total cost when we close out the year. So that's kind of.
John, if I can add something to this.
Yes,
So-
go ahead, Scott.
So this part with the government center, the reason why there are zeros in there from 2021 is because I was directed by Keith to switch that over to the government center because the building name changed. We're not having it under community services building anymore. So I took all the numbers from community services in the budget, that section, put them into government center. So realistically, it's all the numbers that used to be in community services now are into government center, so that the name matches the building on the budget. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but my question is, you look at the bottom line and it looks like it was 152. The budget was 152,708 last year, and it went up to 198,227 this year. Why such a big increase?
After the remodel, originally in the CSB, we were only operating the basement and the first floor. And then last year was our first full year after the remodel. So we did add a whole floor to that building. So we did have some increased cost. Scott, and feel free to jump in if you have anything to add.
Yes, there were some added costs to align with utilities and that with the first year of a new, or the second floor being operated with electricity, with more water use, with more people in the building.
We've got to remember that we eliminated the cost of one whole building, and the cost of this extra floor is a lot less than the cost of the old government center was.
Correct. Any questions on the government center? Then we will move on to the parks and facilities shop. For the most part, we're projecting that that's going to stay realistically the same. Scott's got 6,350 in there for last year, and he's got 6,350 budgeted for 2022. Any question on the parks and facilities shop? We did add heat to that building, so that's why the heat and lights did jump from 950 to 1,500. Moving on to judicial. For the most part, we do have a little uptick there in our water. We anticipate the cost of the water bill from the city is going to go up. For the most part, we don't anticipate a lot of energy change with Excel with the heat and lights. There has been an uptick in natural gas here the last couple of years, a little more volatility there. Have a little bit more built in on that. Taking into account garbage removal typically goes up. The building is aging, it's 20 plus years old. So sticking a little bit more away for repair and maintenance. And same for the building, for the equipment and grounds should realistically stay the same. Most of the other costs kind of remain flat. So 328,500, increase of about 25,000, give or take. So any questions on judicial? In-rem properties is no change. Typically, we don't act on any of the in-rem things until we get directed by Nick that the county has taken possession. And it's typically just go and get the locks changed and basically just secure it up until Nick can get the paperwork done and we can get it sold.
I've got a question on that. This last year, you tore down a house for in-rem properties, I believe.
Yep.
Where did that go in the budget? I would have or I guess we're not seeing actuals, are we? We're just seeing what was budgeted.
Yes, and per Nick's direction on that is we submitted the bill to Corporation Council. And I believe that property is sold now. So as soon as that gets reconciled, then highway will get paid that outstanding bill, the landfill and the equipment and manpower. Nick will cut us a check and reimburse us for the work incurred.
Okay, thank you.
Plan ops, for the most part, we did have some wage increases. Health insurance is projected to go down a little bit. Basically, what you see in white is all done by HR with the PEP numbers, and then the yellow is what Scott has plugged in here. So for the most part, everything is projected to remain flat or very similar to what it was in 2021. So we're expecting that the manpower, and express custodians, that should pretty much remain flat or just about flat. So we have just over $1 million projected in planned ops. Any questions there? The Parks and Facilities Office Building, which is the former CJCC building, that is very similar to, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, because it changed names, same facility. You basically just started out with 0 and plugged in projected fresh numbers from past historical numbers when we operated the CJCC building.
Yeah, tried to work off of what the numbers that were budgeted for CJC this year is, we got moved into the house maybe a half a year, so we don't have a full year to go by what numbers are going to be for utilities. Well, we'll have a better idea after into next year.
Any questions on the new facilities and parks office building? That brings us down to the expenditure side of the capital improvement projects. So per your guys' recommendation, it should reduce that by about $235,000 if we eliminate the bike path and the computer controlled lock systems. So our net reduction in the budget should be about $235,000 off that 2.6 million for plant operations.
Okay, so at this time, I guess would be the time to make it an official. So do I have a motion to reduce remove the bike path and the computer lock control systems?
I make that motion.
Okay,
to remove those from the budget.
Supervisor Rogers made a motion to remove the bike path and the computer controlled lock systems. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay.
And
Tim
then,
seconded.
and then move it on to, we should, in that motion, we should accept the whole budget as amended.
With those two
Okay.
changes.
Yes. Okay, so a motion will be made to accept it as amended. Is that okay with you, Mike and Tim?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So a motion has been made to accept it as amended. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, motion passes.
Aye.
Okay. So that's the end of that one, right, John?
That is correct. Now we will move on to the parks.
So then you will update it with the new numbers then?
I will believe Keith is kind of the keeper of the spreadsheets.
Okay, so.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that will be presented to the executive committee in September at their meeting.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Now we'll move on to county parks. Our proposed budget over 2021 is 18 and about $26,000 greater than it was in 2021, a net increase of about 31%. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Rec Park, we have projected to remain flat throughout 2022. Because racing's contract is still into effect, then our net revenue will remain at 5,500. County parks, we got about a $400 increase to, or actually a $600 decrease down to 44,500. Decrease of just over 1 1/3%. Boyceville shooting range, because we, Scott, correct me here if I'm wrong again, because we said we would help out with the garbage and the rubbish removal. We did have to increase that a little bit to help compensate for the garbage removal. So we're at 400 at Colfax shooting range. Kleist remains flat. Lake Menomen, we took a $200 decrease. Menominee shooting range went from 200 to 600, and Pineview Park remained flat.
I have a question, I guess, in regards to those garbage removals, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can recall something being said about them now getting garbage removal more often. Is that why they're being increased?
Increase them, yes, because we're taking care of it. The $200 a year wasn't going to cover it. They did. There was one that seemed like they started using more, had more garbage pickup. That has backed off. I haven't seen any more bills from them. So throughout the year, it's going to average out about the same as past years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Then the only CapEx we have slated for 2022 was to put down crushed granite between the two old highway shop buildings there along 17th at the Fairgrounds. Any comments or recommendations on placing the crushed granite?
How bad is it, washed out, or is it, what was the thought process? I mean, are we getting dips or what, why do we think we need to replace it?
It is starting to show some age and some washouts. It would be nice to have a level and a little bit more of a maintainable surface. I think it would actually increase the aesthetics too. It's not detrimental if we don't do it. I think it would be a good idea to do some upkeep around there. It hasn't been done, I would say, for probably 20 or 25 years. So I think it's time just to kind of freshen it up. The crushed granite is definitely a cheaper alternative to any sort of pavement. Relatively low cost. The nice thing about granite is it doesn't track the dust, like conventional base course or recycle. If we're looking to cut, we probably could postpone it another year or two. I don't think it would be the end of the world or catastrophic.
So where do you have to go to get granite?
There's a couple different places. We can either go west towards Dresser, Osceola area up in there. Typically, most of ours comes from like our chip seal aggregate and our spray patcher aggregate. Typically like right over in that Stanley Thorpe area. So not too far. You know, if we get on 29 and we haul it with our own trucks, it's actually pretty economical.
So,
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Oh, I was just curious, is there a safety issue as far as people tripping and falling if we don't do this?
And Deb probably could comment more on this, but I would say yes, if we have washouts or it's a little bit rough, potentially there would be a tripping hazard.
We did fill in the washout areas with some crushed rock, crushed limestone. And there wasn't a problem during the fair this year as far that I heard of anybody tripping or having a problem there. We have a pile of crushed limestone down at the rec park. We took that, did some leveling with the tractor and the back blade, and it was good to go. What we have a problem with is if you get a good downpour, then it's going to wash that out. It's a certain spot where the water continually runs. And the pavement that, toward the back of those buildings is basically your in the wintertime, we don't really want to plow it even anymore because it's breaking up the pavement that is there.
Mr. Chair, question?
yes, go ahead.
Question I have, and of course, we're thinking about this and I'm going, okay, what do we do with all of the asphalt that we grind off the roads? Could we potentially use that?
Right now, typically anything that we recycle on the roads, we put back into the roads, because in the 40s, they typically didn't use a lot of base course. So we're looking for any of our crushed, and then typically we add 4 to 6 inches of new aggregate on top when they grind, just so we can get the structural support. Millings would be nice. The only bad thing about millings is with the oil and typically the heat, like around fair time, you're going to get tracking, and that sticky oil grabs the dust, and then you're tracking it all over. Typically the granite is awesome because it doesn't create the dust like conventional base course or lime rock. If it gets really dry and it's not watered, you'll get the dusting effect. And granite is probably the best because it's a very clean material once it's in place, and it doesn't track or dust. Crushed concrete, Portland cement concrete, is probably the next best. A little bit more dusty, but any of the asphalt products tend to get sticky in the heat, and then you get the tracking. And then if there's carpets, rugs, or like the Finetti Center, then people are getting that asphalt to stick to their shoes, and then they start walking in on the white tile or carpets, flooring like that, and then that asphalt residual sticks on there, and it's a real bear to get off. So where there's a lot of foot traffic, we tend to stay away from anything that's going to track.
Thank you for the detailed explanation.
A little more in depth than you probably needed to know.
Well, I was thinking about asphalt being milled, but I was thinking about, I imagine we're going to mill the parking lot, and we could get asphalt from there.
You're talking the government center front parking lot, Dave?
Right.
Yeah. Right now, it's more economical for us, due to the proximity of the shop, is to chunk it out and then haul it to our crush pile at the shop.
Okay.
And then when we, in the next year or two, our crush pile is getting big enough, either we'll crush or we'll hire somebody with a magnet, because we do have some steel and some of that concrete, to come in and crush. And it's going to be more economical to crush it with a crusher than to use a mill or reclaim.
All right.
Just because of the nature with the islands and the street lights or the parking lot lights, it's not really feasible for what they're going to charge us for mold and to pulverize.
All right. Thank you.
Can I add a comment regarding that?
Sure.
As long as you asked or mentioned my name, but we are really struggling to have enough handicap parking at the fairgrounds. And so last year we ended up having people park between those two buildings and kind of reserving that for like staff and for judges and for and we use it for handicap parking. And that's probably the biggest thing is it's hard to navigate if you're in a scooter or a wheelchair through that area. We did get some complaints about that if you're gonna have us park there, can we straighten out the parking lot and not have so many bumps and different things? So we do hear it during Fair Week. You know, that something needs to be done with that parking lot. And I don't believe anybody fell this year. I didn't see anybody personally, but I'm kind of busy and I know that nobody reported that they fell, but there are trip hazards in there, especially when you get to a little bit to the back there. And then in the front where the water runs, where Scott was talking about with the gravel, that they brought some crushed rock in. And I was out there the other day and I see it kind of washed again with that last rain we had. So we're already washing that part out. Just my 2 cents.
Okay, so what do we think?
That's part of the borrowing.
That would be
They're
part of
getting
the
notes there. Yep. Yeah, it is part of the borrowing plan per the CIP.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
But if a person put in the granite, would that help the handicap parking thing, Deb, or are they looking for something smoother than the granite even?
Well, obviously they'd probably like something, but they just want the bumps and the grooves taken out. And I think if I'm not, and John maybe can explain it better, but that stuff gets pretty hard and gets pretty compact and it doesn't get a lot of ruts in it. And I think that's the problem now is that there's cracks and there's breaks and it's, even if it's dark at night and you're walking there, it's kind of, you got to watch where you're stepping so you don't like turn an ankle in some spots and stuff. So, you know, we have lights there, but it's not 100% lit either. So when you get around the corner, but.
Okay.
Essentially, it's going to look just like a chip sealed road. A little bit rough texture, but for the most part, it's nice and flat. You won't get any rutting, bicycles, wheelchairs, scooters, any of that stuff. The next best thing, obviously, like Deb said, is paving it, concrete or asphalt. But it is a smooth surface with a little bit of texture. So the nice thing is too, it's just aggressive enough there to where even if it does rain or get wet, people aren't going to slip and slide. It will provide a little bit of traction too. So it's kind of the best of both worlds and kind of fits in the cost parameters.
Okay. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
So a question for you, John, is what is the longevity of the granite? That it seems that I'm assuming it's probably significantly cheaper than blacktop. Is the longevity, are you going to get quite a few years out of this and still be a suitable parking lot?
Yeah. I'm originally from St. Cloud, Minnesota, and that's known as the Granite City. My folks had this stuff for 40 years before they sold their farm. And I would say probably every 15 or 20 years, we would have we had a pretty big yard with a ring road and down to the barn and everything. And I would say over the years, we probably had 2 or maybe 3 quad loads come in. So just to kind of dress it up because we were on a slope and it's going to settle and blow away and you're going to plow some off when you plow snow. But once you put it in 4 to 6 inches deep and it gets compacted, it's very minimal maintenance, and dress it up a little bit here and there is about it. It's a good durable product and it stays put. It's pretty awesome.
Well,
I think it's a cost effective compared to blacktops, so it's more it's easier to swallow that though.
Yes.
And it sounds like it's needed.
It's needed and it's not breaking the budget yet, so.
Okay.
That's why we're
Leave it
spending all
as
this
is
time
for now.
talking about $26,000, so I think we move on.
Yep, okay.
So that brings our total revenue line to 108. Obviously, the 26,000 on the CapEx for the Granite improvement to the parking lot is what increased our budget from last year by about 31%. So then we're down to the rec park. For the most part, those are all remaining flat. Scott does have $5,000 allocated to equipment, and he's got $7,000 less from the year before on maintenance and grounds. There again, we're just trying to kind of balance those pots from previous years so we can kind of pinpoint and dial in on where our actual costs are here in the future. Got the balance of that is down to $2,000 in maintenance supplies, kind of broke out for a 0% increase overall at the rec park. County parks, he does have a $600 decrease over all the inputs for the county parks. Any questions on that? And then we're basically down to the garbage removal, and those are direct revenue and expenditure costs. So the 400s, 375s, the 600s, they all mirror the revenue side of the first part of the budget. And then we're down to the 26,000 for the capital improvement for the parking lot. And it balances out at 108,850. Any questions on the parks budget?
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, if not, make a motion to move on.
I move that we move this. I make the motion. I move that we move this on.
Okay, is there a second?
As is.
As is, yep. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, a motion's been made. Motion's been made and seconded to move the proposed budget on as is. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, moves on as is. Okay, the next one.
Next one, and Deb, I'm probably going to ask you for help on this. This is the fair budget. Basically about a 0.25% increase. So Deb, feel free to chime in and I'll just move along as you request.
There we go. We tried to keep this budget pretty much similar to what it has been in previous years. I did create an ask for $30,000 to help fund some of our events and stuff that were out there, but that was removed by Paul and Keith, I believe it was. So that was taken out of there automatically. And therefore, the gate revenue was increased to compensate for that piece of it. This year was an unusual year because coming off a COVID year, we didn't have very much income last year. So the 2021, our gate revenue and everything is up. I can't give you the exact numbers yet, but there's really not a lot of changes here as far as income. Unless anybody has questions.
Moving on to the expenditure side.
Yep. Kind of cuts there in half. There we go. Okay, so prior to this year, our per diems were where, I'm not sure where they were. They were just in the probably administration area. So I believe those have now been moved into this budget. After, at some point last year, they were moved in for the year before. And of course that stayed pretty much the same. There's been no increases as far as per diems for committee members. We did move to a cell phone, which is new. Instead of having a number that was routed through the highway department, we have a cell phone now that covers the fair. And it's kind of nice that way because Marge isn't stuck with answering the fair questions. She still gets some, but because people remember that she works for facilities, so they call her number. But basically, we do have that. So that's a new area. And also we are now paying, I don't know how we paid for our internet before. I'm assuming that came out of the IT budget. So those are two new categories that were added to our budget. With having the internet at the fair office and some hotspots that we had, we did increase that piece moving forward to reflect better under that, now that I have that category, because before that just was all jumbled into miscellaneous expenses. So those are our two newer categories that were put in there this year. The contractual services consulting fee is public works and reserve officers. Our coordinator, and like I mentioned before, Sam is going to school, so we will be losing her as a coordinator for the fair. She probably will stay on and do our social media and that piece of it, and our design work for our posters and stuff. She is going to be hard to replace. She's been working for the fair since she was 12 years old, most of the time as a volunteer. So I right now plan on taking over more of that stuff just to keep the budget down. I guess I'm retired, so I might have a little more time to do that. So we have to, as a board, sit down and have a good discussion about where we're going with that position, and if we will be hiring somebody at an hourly wage. It has to have because of the varied duties. It's not somebody that you can just hire from Express and have them come in for a day or two or a week or two a month to help you out, because there's so many state regs and that we have to follow as a fair to understand that whole piece of how that all works and how to hire judges and all of that. So that part, we just left it pretty much the same. I usually get those numbers from John and from the reserve officers. When we go to convention in January, I plan on talking to some private security agencies to help us with security at the fair. Then that came about because the sheriff's department just does not have enough reserve officers to help us out. It's been a real struggle this year for us and Red Cedar Racing to have reserve officers. Evidently the state changed some regulation that they don't have to have hours of practice now. They can move right from school to a regular job with a sheriff's or a police department. And with this climate that we're living in nowadays, the people that are willing to work in those areas they're not as readily available. We used to get people that would come and volunteer at the fair, reserves officers that would volunteer at the fair just so they could get hours to use on their resume. It doesn't happen anymore. But otherwise, judges' fees are still the same. We hired fewer judges this year just because we knew the number of exhibits were down, and we will look at that again next year. I'd like to increase their rate. We pay $9.50 an hour to judges, but most of them don't judge because they want to make money. Most of them are there just to work with the kids and to visit the fairs. But we're doing a survey in our district too right now to find out, and high right now so far is $12.50 an hour. And so far the low is $8 an hour. So we're kind of in the middle of the pack there, but I don't anticipate having to use more funds than that. Office supplies, pretty stagnant. Postage. We do a lot of emails. We've really cut the postage budget way down. Printing, I did add a little bit there. We found out this year, especially with not printing a fair book, and just having the online version, we ended up printing them in the office, like for the senior citizens and especially that probably didn't have access to internet. So I did put $100 extra in there for some fair books to be printed. Otherwise, most of that area stayed pretty much the same. I did lower the premium expenses down based on the number of anticipated exhibitors that we would have. And so that area came in. Other expense, property insurance or grandstand, I guess, is pretty much the same. We did switch over the beer garden, the 2 beer gardens, and I'd still like to maybe work with Keith or John to get those broke out and not have the beer gardens included in the grandstand, because that's 2 separate entities. Prior to a couple years ago, we were paying for the actual product out of our income account, and then Keith asked us to change that, and we didn't have any budget money set aside for that. So we do now have the budget money set aside to pay for the product and to pay the nonprofits that sell it for us. But I'd like to break out social garden or beer garden into a separate category, because it really doesn't belong in with the entertainment piece of it. Otherwise, water, garbage, most everything else pretty much stayed the same.
With our total expense closing out at 213,173 again, about 0.25% increase. Any questions?
I have, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Going back up to the expense for the reserve officers and public works staff, is that 44,000? Is that total for? Is it just for public works staff and reserve officers?
And it's also our coordinator. And I don't believe does Marge charge any time to that, John?
Not to that line, no.
No.
Okay, how much is your coordinator, I guess? How much was that of that 44,000?
I would have to probably ask HR. Well, it says 13,800 there for attendance hours. So let's go with that number.
Okay.
That seems realistic, yes.
That's about right. I was gonna say around 12,000, and it's right there, 13,800.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And then I have, as the total budget, we don't see what actuals were, but if I remember right, the 18 and 19 or 19 and 20 budget, the total fair budget was came in over budget, the expenses. Do you have any idea what the 21 budget, if it's going to be close to what we've got down here for 212? Is that going to be about your actual expenses and revenue, or do you think you're going to be over again in expenses or under in revenue?
Okay, so right now, Dave, what I'm looking at is, and that's why those numbers aren't all in, because I'm still going back and forth with some of our invoices that we've gotten. Our invoice process that we use now is much better. Before they're paid from the fair, at least the ones that Marge gets now in the office and that I get personally are all reviewed. I've sent back 3 of them now to be redone because they're higher than what our quotes were and our estimates were. So I'm hoping that we're going to come in under budget, actually, that we're going to that we won't be over.
Yeah.
We also made some changes with the grandstand and how we operated that this year too.
All right.
So that
you-
should reduce that piece of it.
So you think your revenues and your expenses of this year, 21, is going to come in pretty close to even, so you'll be on budget.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. I spent a lot of time working on this, Dave.
Yeah,
Trying
I
to-
believe you did.
Trying
And
to skim
and
every
I
penny I
appreciate
can.
all the work you do for the county, because we wouldn't have a fair, we wouldn't have as nice a fair without you. I'm sure of that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board as far as on the fair budget as it was presented this evening? Hearing none, is there a motion to move the fair budget forward as presented?
I so move to move it forward.
Motion's been made to move it forward. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, moves forward as presented. Thanks, Deb. Okay, next item for discussion. What do we got here? 2022 facilities fleet replacements.
I can take that.
Okay,
Scott and I met again with Jen Stigman from Enterprise Rental. She gave us numbers on replacement of our 3/4 ton plow trucks. The 2018s that we have are going to be out of warranty here after our 336. The way that the truck market and the plow market is, Jen recommends to trade and replace them with new trucks. Currently, our capital lease payments on those vehicles are $606 a month. But because of the high demand for trucks and their current value and our equity that we would have built in there, our new payments would be about $574, an actual savings of about $30 or $32 per truck. What Scott and I are recommending is, per Jen's recommendation from Enterprise, is to replace these plow trucks with 2022 models, which will bring us back into new warranty. Actually keep our payments the same. And the reason being is then we won't need to amend the budget. We'll keep those current payments as is. That will project us more equity in the vehicles when we have them. And just in case the market would soften and we'd get a little bit less than the projected value, we would still be covered. Third scenario is if the COVID rears its head again and the vehicles get pushed out like our Malibus did and like most vehicle models are right now, and we wouldn't be able to get them. And right now it looks like GM is the cheapest one with Chevy. If for some odd reason we couldn't get the vehicles or we'd cancel the order, we would keep the existing vehicles for one more year. Our payments would stay the same. We would just keep progressing in the current cycle. Nothing would change. So our recommendation is to just any extra when we do sell these trucks, put that on the back end, have more equity in that vehicle, but protect our payments with the same payment budget wise. It won't affect our budget. And just in case something would go sideways on receiving 2022 trucks, keep the 18s for one more year.
okay, and how many trucks are we talking about replacing?
5.
5, okay. Okay, you've heard the case. What's the board's wishes? Anybody? I think it sounds like a good deal myself.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we move forward with replacing of the 5 trucks with 2022 models. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to replace the 5 plow trucks. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, motion carried. Okay, John, go ahead and get working on the new trucks.
And
Perfect.
you get to keep the old ones till the new ones come in, correct?
That is correct. Yep, we don't give them up until we physically can touch the new ones.
Okay. Next one, item D, central fleet vehicle use. What's that, John?
This is actually going to take probably a little discussion by the committee. And Scott, feel free to chime in at any time. We've had a request with extension, and I know extension is slightly removed from actual county use of central fleet vehicles. We've had a request, I believe it's in October, for extension to attend the national convention in Memphis, Tennessee, which I believe is 12 or 13 hours away. So we're looking at multi-day, multi-state use of this vehicle by technically more of a state department than a county department. Scott, you want to chime in with any extra?
Yeah, it was asked of me about extension using a vehicle, taking it down to Memphis or Nashville, wherever it is, somewhere down there. Taking one of the county vehicles, they would pay for the gas on their own personal credit card, and then get reimbursed from the state on the fuel. But apparently this has been done before with extension, that they have taken county vehicles. I think it was said that Katie Wantock has taken county vehicles. So once this was asked of me, I talked it over with John and wanted to bring it up with the facilities committee to see if this is something that we want to continue allowing to happen. It's a long distance. I know Human Services Department has taken vehicles as far as the state of Arkansas, moving clients, children, moved them down there, and then a couple months later they go back down and move them back up here. It's a lot of travel, a lot of miles, and ties up one of our fleet vehicles. So we'll throw it out there and see what the thoughts are of the committee.
Yeah, Don, go ahead.
We're talking about one vehicle?
Yes.
Yes.
One.
And do you know how they're paid? I mean, they travel. How does that work now? Are they reimbursed from the state for using their own vehicle, or do you have any idea how that works?
I don't know how extension does any of that with their travel. If they, like I said, the one that contacted me said that another person has used a county vehicle in the past and taken it to places like this.
Now, with extension, you must be referring to UW extension, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mike, you had a question?
If they're getting reimbursed for fuel, why aren't they getting paid mileage, or are they getting reimbursed mileage through the state on their personal? And then are they double dipping here?
Well, I don't want to insinuate that, but we pay them so much money contracting for extension personnel. And I've never seen a line item for, personal or for vehicle expense. So I'm thinking that comes from the state. And just like Mike, is it just that they don't want to take their own vehicle that far? Or I've got to, I realize we probably can't answer those questions, but I definitely would like to hear those questions, those answers.
Yeah, Don, go ahead. You're muted, Don. Can't hear you.
Oh, I think Jim Anderson would be a good person to talk to about that because he kind of runs the committee that supervises the.
I guess I do have a question.
Yeah.
And now I'm not real sure what, but no, the question I have is this conference that they're going to, is that something that is county business related? Because we hire them for county work.
I believe there would be a tie to it because we contract out the extension, and I believe it's the National Extension Convention. So I don't know how you want to draw lines to it, but I would say yes, there is affiliation because we hire them for extension services, and this is the National Convention. But
Okay.
Scott and I just wanted to clarify with the committee's direction on since extension is slightly removed from it's more black and white if it's a county employee doing county business with a county central fleet, because it's slightly removed to CYA. We would like the committee's direction on your thoughts on how this gets handled.
Oh, I think it's quite a ways removed because Tim has a good point there. We hire them to do a service for the county, and going to a convention is kind of education or something for them.
Yeah,
that
provides no direct benefit.
Right.
To the county.
A number of the extension people work in multiple counties that we pay a third or we pay a fourth. Yeah. Or I guess I've just got a bunch of questions about why Dunn County is being asked to use a vehicle.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, this is in October?
I believe it's November.
So we would have one or two facilities meetings to not act on this, gather more intel, and then report back to the committee.
I think you should go and get more information. Catherine Emanuel, or she's the head of the extension in this region, kind of explain why they're asking for this.
Yep.
And I guess, obviously I worked for a company for a lot of years and I drove my own vehicle. And when I drove my own vehicle, I submitted the expense back to the company for mileage. And there are regular mileage rates that were approved by the IRS, that the IRS sets. Right. And I go, okay, are they, and I have the same question that was asked earlier. Are they using our vehicle? And then are they?
So, okay, for now then, we will gather more information and we'll hopefully get some questions answered, and we'll have it on next month's agenda.
Yep.
So, okay. Next item, consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances to be recommended to the Dunn County Board. We have none. Next meeting date will be September 22nd. We will probably we will have a special meeting to discuss the racing prior to that, but our next official meeting date will be September 22nd.
Sorry, I'm back. I dropped off.
Oh, that's okay.
We were on the meeting too long. My internet decided to do a hiccup.
Yeah. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Are you going to set that date for that special meeting tonight, or?
I was going to ask, is there a date that does not work for anybody? I mean, a real painstaking, I will not, because I do want everybody there.
I won't be here next Wednesday on the 1st, Wednesday night on the 1st.
Okay.
I'll be on an airplane.
Oh, well, okay. if you have to. If you'd rather be on an airplane than with us, go ahead.
Late.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Okay.
Honesty, right?
Yes, yes. Let's see, the 15th is the county board. Okay, that's not good.
I imagine they would like it sooner than later.
Right. So let's, well, then we got Labor Day in there. That's no good. Are you going to, will you be back, Mike, on the 9th? Is the 9th a okay day for you, Mike?
I'll Zoom whatever it is, so I'll just make it work. I'll get up at 1 a.m. and do a Zoom call.
Could you do it before the 1st?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. How about on the 31st then, next Tuesday night? How does that work for everybody? Okay, let's put out an announcement, or a special, a meeting on the 31st. Does that work for you, John?
Yes, one action item only then,
One action
discussing.
item only.
Okay,
It'll be, yeah.
yep,
Yep, discussing the Red Cedar Racing attendance for Punky Manor.
yep. I will put that together in the morning and Marge will send it out.
Okay. So it'll be at 6:30. Okay, very good. Thank you. It was a long meeting tonight, but we, got a lot of things discussed. So with that, if there's nothing else by anybody, we are adjourned. Thank you.